Okay, in this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about the structure of the advertising industry. First, I have to talk about who the advertisers are, who the clients are. Now, the most obvious group would be manufacturers, companies like Apple or Nike, but we also have service providers, insurance companies, people who do tax services, lawyers, doctors, that sort of thing. In addition to that, we also have resellers, stores. You've seen ads for Macy's and other chains as well. Uh, and these are the most obvious type of advertisers. Another one you might not expect, and one that surprised me when I started my consulting practice, was the not for profit sector. Not for profit organizations often have to do a lot of advertising. There's actually a lot of profit in not for profit. Charities and other service organizations often have to communicate and advertise and promote their organization for donations or for other purposes. Another one that you might not be that aware of or cognizant of is the government. Governments have to advertise. Now, you don't get your choice of government as long as you're living in one particular place, but for instance, probably the biggest advertiser would be the military. Now, they're not advertising for customers, they're advertising for recruits, uh, but also various programs they want to communicate and will have to advertise. Um, in addition to that, we also have various political groups, political candidates, activist groups, various organizations which want to promote uh, their positions, want people to vote for them, and we can probably roll lobbyists in here somewhere. So those are various types of clients or advertisers that we would have. And then, of course, there is the structure of the industry itself. Now, the most common type of agency would be the full service ad agency. This type of agency provides creative work, they provide media placement, market research, strategy development, and they are called a full service ad agency. They'll provide social media support as well as other services. The next category we would call a boutique agency. Now, a boutique agency is, as might be indicated by the word boutique, it is a smaller type of agency. It primarily focuses on creative work, copywriting, art direction. Yes, they may do some media placement, but that's not their strength by any means. In fact, many full service ad agencies began as boutique agencies, and many full service agencies might even outsource to boutique agencies if they are in a high demand period. Um, After that, we could talk about design agencies. Design agencies are agencies which primarily focus on visuals. Logos are extremely important for both organizations and products. They might do trade show graphics, other sort of visual presentations of various sorts. After that, we would have media buying groups. Now, this is sort of the opposite, and this is a relatively recent development and only in the last few decades. Many of the full service ad agencies have been purchased, bought up by large holding groups. WPP, Saatchi are just two of them, probably two of the more famous ones. And the reason they do this is to be able to do quantity purchasing of media, and this is where the media buying groups come in. They're another subset of these large holding companies. Imagine for a moment that you are in charge of selling advertising at one of the networks. And if I come in with one client and I say I want to buy 200 TV spots, you're going to pull out what's called the rate card, a list of rates, um, and give me the list price, as it were. But if I were part of a media buying group and I say, hey, I want to place ads for Nike, McDonald's, Apple, General Motors, and several other companies, you would probably want to give me a quantity discount to make sure I don't walk away and go to one of the other networks. And that's how a media buying group works. It's basically leveraging its position within these holding companies, holding groups, to handle all their advertising, media placement, and to get quantity discounts. They also do a lot of analysis on where the best markets are, how to get the best bang for the buck. They don't do any creative work. That they leave to the other agencies. Some other agencies or types of organizations would be public relations agencies. And many public relations agencies, many full service ad agencies will do public relations, but most advertisers, most companies prefer to have their public relations organization separate from the agency. Because often they have different approaches, different objectives. In one situation that I was in, we actually had our advertising handled and our public relations handled by the same agency. And I became dissatisfied, as did other people in my company, with the performance of the public relations arm of their agency. And so we essentially fired them and hired another public relations agency. But then I had the awkwardness of having to go to the ad agency and seeing the people we had just fired the previous month. So often you'll find many companies will keep those functions separate. Also, we have database agencies, sometimes called direct marketing agencies, and they focus on direct marketing, and we'll talk more about direct marketing later in the course. And then finally, we have production companies or production specialists. These are the people who physically create the ad. These would be photographers, illustrators, movie directors, or film directors, the talent. Now, talent is a term that we use for anyone who appears in an ad or is heard in an ad. So this would include actors, models, voiceover artists, and so forth. So that's when that's a little some jargon for the industry, talent. We also have stylists of various types, food stylists, hair stylists, makeup stylists, obviously, prop stylists, people who just, if you want something to look just right, to suggest a certain era or a certain attitude or a certain profession, you want to have everything styled right. Food styling, of course, is an amazing specialty where you really make food look very appealing. It's called appetite appeal, and gets people's mouths watering. And there's some interesting stories about food stylists. I won't include them in this video, but often much of the food you actually see in ads would not be that edible. Might be, but may not be, because often they want to make the food look good, make it look juicy, make it look very appealing, and under hot lights for a long period of time, maybe going with regular food or food that hasn't been treated in a certain way might be difficult. For instance, on having a mug of beer keep its head. And actually, I know one case where they actually put foam, like rubber foam, in the top of the beer to keep it looking like it was keeping its head for a long period of time. And so there's a little bit of fakery in there, and there are rules as to what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. If you're advertising that food, if the food is the product, you have to be very careful about what you're allowed to do. For instance, if you're showing a McDonald's Big Mac, you actually have to use the ingredients for the Big Mac. You cannot add anything extra. You can't put any, like slip in some cardboard to make the sandwich look a little higher. You can't do that. There's very specific rules. But food stylists will know what they can do and what they can't do. In addition, we also have model makers and animal handlers, and trainers, location scouts, and location agents, special effects people, as well as all sorts of other post-production specialties, editors and so forth. So all these production specialists would not usually be inside the agency, because you want a choice. Let's say photographers, different photographers have different styles, and you want to be able to use the style that fits the ad that you're trying to do. The same with an illustrator or a video or film director. So anyway, that's a brief overview of the structure of the industry, and we'll have some more information coming in other videos.